The millionaire's triplet daughters drove away 19 nannies until she arrived and did the impossible. Rowan Vale stood in the penthouse as Seattle's signature misty rain slid slowly down the glass windows, the city lights behind them blurring through the water. He had just watched the 19th caregiver walk out, a professionally trained specialist once recommended by a prestigious preschool, now fleeing with panic in her eyes, the wheels of her suitcase screeching sharply across the marble floor. The apartment fell silent again, except for shrill bursts of laughter echoing from the living room. Nira and Elowin, two of his 5-year-old triplet daughters, had just finished building a fortress out of sofa cushions and were screaming in triumph like victors after a great battle. Sarah, the third triplet, sat deep inside the fortress, clutching a pillow and quietly watching the hallway as if to make sure there was still an adult there. Rowan loosened his tie and sighed. His wife, Celeste, a beloved art teacher, had died suddenly from a brain aneurysm just 1 year earlier, leaving behind a void Rowan still could not fill. Since then, he had tried everything: therapy, discipline, strict routines. But nothing worked. Every nanny he hired was driven away, defeated or exhausted by the 3 grieving little girls, children who had learned to test everyone and no longer trusted anyone. His phone vibrated with a message from his assistant. Aria Bloom will arrive in 15 minutes. The final interview. Rowan looked out over the fog-covered city of Seattle, his jaw tightening. Aria Bloom arrived exactly on time. Not early, not rushed. No clicking high heels, no sharply tailored suit. She wore simple jeans, an olive-green cardigan, her chestnut-brown hair loosely tied back, a few soft strands falling around her face. Rowan stepped out when he heard the doorbell. She stood there, not trying to impress, not clutching a resume, only a calm smile and steady blue eyes, as if she had walked through storms and still kept her gentleness. "Mr. Vale," she spoke first, "I'm Aria." Her voice was warm and unhurried. When they shook hands, Rowan was surprised by how real the contact felt. Not indifferent, not overly firm, simply human to human. "Please, come in," he said, leading her into the living room. "You're the final interview on my list." "And if I'm not the right fit?" Aria asked, her gaze unflinching. "A boarding school? Extended family? Or giving up?" Rowan gave a dry laugh. "You don't avoid difficult questions." "Only when I need to know whether I can truly help," she replied evenly. Aria did not bring a portfolio. Instead, she took a handwritten sheet of paper from her bag. A 1-page agreement. It promised no miracles, only a 6-month commitment, unconditional presence, and care without expectations. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "I only want to meet the children, not as a candidate, but as a person. If it doesn't feel right, I'll leave." Rowan looked at the paper, then at the woman who did not promote herself, who only offered quiet sincerity. And something inside him, something that had been frozen for a year, gently shifted. "All right," he whispered. "You start tomorrow." The next morning, Aria arrived at 6:45 a.m., carrying a thermal coffee flask and a small suitcase. Not early enough to appear overeager, but early enough to show she took her word seriously. The elevator carried her to the top floor. When the doors opened, Rowan was not there. Only chaos was waiting for her. "I don't want to wear this shirt." "Naira, you took my dinosaur." "Elowin, get out of the closet right now." "Dad!" Rapid footsteps, something crashing to the floor, Rowan's strained voice echoing down the hallway. Aria stepped in quietly, closing the door behind her. She followed the noise into the kitchen, where Rowan, hair disheveled, shirt wrinkled, was crouched in front of a cabinet, coaxing Elowin to come out while Nira overturned a chair, looking for her kidnapped dinosaur. Sarah stood pressed against Rowan, clutching the hem of his shirt, her eyes wet, but not daring to cry out loud, as if afraid that if she let go, everything would disappear. "You really are a lifesaver," Rowan muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Nira is melting down. Elowin is hiding. I have an online meeting in 40 minutes. Arya did not answer immediately. She poured coffee from the thermal flask into 2 cups and handed one to him. "They're not difficult," she said softly. "They're scared." "Scared of what?" Rowan snapped. "Scared of getting dressed for school? Scared that when they come home, you won't be there?" Rowan froze, his coffee cup suspended in midair. "Since their mother died," Arya continued, "every goodbye feels like the last one. They don't know whether the people they love will still be there when they return, because last time someone didn't come back." Rowan said nothing, but his gaze changed, tightening. Arya moved toward the cabinet door where Elowin had locked herself inside. She didn't knock. She simply knelt down, her voice low like a lullaby. "Hello, it's Arya here. I brought a friend with me. He gets stomach aches when he feels worried, too. His name is Moss. I thought maybe you two should meet." Silence, then a soft click. The door opened slightly. Brown eyes peered out, stopping on the floppy-eared stuffed dog in Arya's hand. "He gets stomach aches when he worries," Arya said. "Do you think you could help him feel better?" Elowin gave a small nod. Arya remained seated, not moving any closer. Hearing her, Nira stopped her tantrum and quietly stepped closer. Sarah also took another step forward, still gripping Rowan's shirt, but with less panic in her eyes. "I'll go to school if Moss goes too," Elowin whispered. "And if Arya is still here when we come back," Nira added firmly. Sarah murmured, as if afraid to hear herself speak. "And you promise you'll stay? Really?" Arya looked at Rowan. "Can you help them believe that?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in that chaotic morning, there was enough quiet for 3 small hearts to find their rhythm again. That morning, for the first time, Nira, Elowin, and Sarah got dressed for school without a single battle. No tears, no shouting, only Arya's simple promise. "I'll be here when you come back." And Elowin's quiet nod, Nira's relieved breath, and the way Sarah looked at her as if clinging to a lifeline. That was enough. When the front door closed behind them, Rowan stood frozen in the hallway. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I didn't do anything," Arya replied. "I just stayed." 3 days passed, then 4, then a week. Arya was still there, morning after morning, night after night, as if leaving had never been an option. She did not try to become their new mother. She did not pretend that loss could be replaced. Arya simply showed up. She built Lego towers with Nira, letting the girl decide how tall they would be. She read with Elowin, pausing whenever the child needed quiet moments to understand. And with Sarah, she did not force cheerfulness or chatter. She simply sat beside her, sometimes resting a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder so she would know, "I'm still here." When they asked about their mother, she did not avoid the subject. She told the truth in the gentlest words. "Your mother loves you very much, and a love like that does not disappear just because she is no longer here." On a rainy Saturday afternoon, Rowan returned from the store and heard laughter drifting from the kitchen. Arya was baking, flour dusting her sleeves, her hair loose, the warm scent of butter filling the air. Nira was sifting flour beside her. Elowin was shaping dough into crescent moons. Sarah stood nearby, carefully counting each cookie, whispering as if reassuring herself that these small things might stay longer than the rain. "She says crescent moons leave room for something new," Elowin explained, her voice small but certain. Rowan paused in the doorway, staring at a scene he had thought he would never see again. Laughter, warmth, the smell of baked goods, as if they had always belonged here. Arya did not build trust through grand gestures or persuasion. She did not try to win Nira and Alawan over with flashy games or fairy tale promises. She began with the simplest thing, staying. She sat beside their sofa-cushion fortress on the living room floor. She did not intrude, did not impose new rules. She only asked softly, "What was the hero's name in yesterday's story?" Elowen looked at her, then replied quietly, "Finn." Arya nodded. "Do you think Finn made it in time to save the bear?" Sarah glanced at her, then very gently pulled her pillow a little closer, as if she, too, wanted to step into that story. And so the afternoon drifted into their world. Arya did not lead. She followed, not to fix, but to accompany. At dinner, she did not force vegetables. Instead, she told them she used to be afraid of broccoli when she was little, then whispered, "A little cheese makes it less scary." Nira tried a bite, grimaced, but did not spit it out. Elowen quietly finished her portion. Sarah watched her sisters, then tried a small bite too, as if learning to trust that she could do things that were no longer frightening. That night, when Rowan watched his daughters eat without pleading, he turned to Arya. "What are you doing?" he asked. Arya smiled. "I'm letting them feel safe in their own way." She read bedtime stories, one book each night, sometimes repeated if they wished. No rushing, no skipping pages. When Elowen once asked quietly, "Have you ever known someone who didn't come back?" Arya simply answered, "Yes, and I think about them every day." Elowen said nothing more, but that night gently pulled a blanket over Arya's legs as she sat reading nearby. Sarah said nothing either, but she slid her pillow closer, as if shortening the distance could make fear smaller. Nira tested her in other ways, forgetting her lunchbox, accidentally spilling milk. Arya did not scold. She handed her a cloth, wiped together, and said, "Accidents happen. We handle them together." Little by little, Nira's outbursts softened. Elowen's silence grew lighter. Sarah stopped flinching at the sound of doors and stopped watching the clock as if counting down to another disappearance. A week later, while getting ready for school, Nira blurted out, "Arya, I dreamed you made shark-shaped pancakes." "Sharks?" Arya raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious, but I can try. Sunday?" "Sunday?" Nira asked, hopeful and uneasy at the same time. "Sunday," Arya nodded, "unless you change your mind." Elowen chimed in, "She won't change her mind." Sarah whispered, as if afraid to break something fragile, "And you won't change either, right?" Arya looked at her, then nodded very slowly. "Right. No grand promises, no tears, only a quiet invitation. Please stay." A week later, on a cold, rainy Thursday night in Seattle, Rowan had just finished a late video call when he heard hurried knocking on his office door. It was Nira. Her face was flushed, beads of sweat on her skin. "Elowen is burning up." Rowan rushed after Nira into the bedroom. Elowen was curled beneath the blankets, her forehead blazing, a soft moan escaping her lips, her eyes barely open. Arya, who had been quietly reading in the living room, hurried toward the bedroom as if she had sensed the call even before it was spoken. She knelt beside the bed, one hand on Elowen's forehead, the other gently rubbing her back. No panic, no rapid questions, only steady presence. "Can you hear me, Elowen?" Arya asked, her voice like a lullaby. "I'm here." Elowen gave a faint nod. A tear slid down her temple, not from fear, but from relief. Rowan stood in the doorway, watching in silence. Sarah stood beside him, holding her breath, as if breathing too hard might shatter that fragile, "I'm here" moment. He had once believed that no one could enter the closed world his children had built around their pain. But Arya had stepped in without asking, simply by listening, day by day, breath by breath. When the pediatrician arrived, Arya stayed by Elowen's side, gently patting her back. After the fever broke, Elwyn fell asleep in Arya's arms, still clutching moss. Neera stood in the doorway and turned to Rowan. "I think Claire is real, not someone who's going to leave." Sarah said nothing, but she stepped closer and laid a hand on Elwyn's blanket, as if checking whether that real person was still there. Rowan did not respond. The words echoed within him, not only from Neera, but from himself. Nothing needed to be said. Nothing needed to be asked. After the doctor left and Elwyn gradually stabilized, Arya remained by the bed as if she were an irreplaceable part of the child's world. Rowan quietly brought over an extra blanket and pillow, setting them at the edge of the bed across from them. He did not dare break the moment that filled the room, the even breathing, the gentle nightlight, and a quiet love suspended in the air. Arya lay down, her eyes never leaving the girls. Neera moved first, edging closer, resting her head on Arya's arm. A little later, Elwyn, half asleep, shifted and pressed her cheek against Arya's chest, clinging tightly as if afraid she might wake to find her gone. Sarah crept in from the other side, clutching the hem of Arya's olive-green cardigan, her fingers tightening until they turned white. Then, very softly, like a whisper through the blankets, "Don't go, Claire." "Don't go," Sarah whispered too, barely audible. Arya did not answer. She simply held all three of them closer, burying her face in their soft, child-scented hair. Her heart felt as if it might burst, not from pain, but from something deeper. For the first time in her life, she felt that she belonged somewhere. Not by condition, not by promise. Simply by belonging. Standing in the doorway, Rowan watched silently, as if witnessing a painting he had never imagined he would see. In that moment, he understood that Arya had not only entered this house, she had entered their hearts without knocking. As he turned away, his hand tightening around the doorknob, Arya lifted her head and whispered softly enough for him to hear, "Thank you for letting me stay." Rowan turned back, his voice low. "No, Arya, I'm the one who should be thanking you. For staying, for choosing to stay." After the night of Alowin's fever, no words were spoken between Rowan and Arya. Yet everything had changed. The next morning, when Rowan brewed his coffee, he poured 2 cups instead of 1. Arya accepted it without asking. For the first time, they stood side by side in the kitchen, as if they had done so 100 times before. No awkwardness, no formality, only a quiet familiarity settling into place. She toasted bread for Neera, folded clothes with Elwyn, helped Sarah find the sock she always hid under her pillow because she was afraid that, if it stayed out there, it would disappear, and helped Rowan adjust the layout of an article he was stuck on. They did not speak about the future because somewhere both of them knew this was no longer temporary. Neera began calling her Mom Claire in her sleep. Elwyn drew a picture of 5 people standing in the rain: Dad, Neera, Elwyn, Sarah, and a woman in an olive-green sweater. Arya pinned it to the refrigerator, her heart trembling when she saw the word family scrawled above it. Sarah stood beside her, staring at the picture for a long time, as if she were finally daring to believe in that word. Rowan started noticing the little things. Arya peeled apples for Elwyn into a long spiral, exactly the way Celeste used to do it. She remembered Neera liked to sit on the left side of the table so she could see the small maple tree outside the window. She remembered Sarah preferred the inner edge, where she could see the whole room and be sure everyone was still there. No one had told her these things. She simply remembered, and somehow that meant more than any words. One evening, after the girls had gone to sleep, Rowan brought Arya a cup of mint tea. "You're always here," he said softly, "even when no one asks you to be." "Why?" Arya smiled, her gaze lowering. "Because some people shouldn't have to beg to be allowed to stay." Rowan fell silent, not because he had nothing to say, but because there was too much he was not yet ready to admit. But when Arya stood up to fold the sofa blanket, Rowan gently took her hand. "Arya," he whispered, "I'm truly grateful that you came." In the warm golden light of the living room, there were no declarations, no grand gestures, only an undeniable truth. They were no longer strangers. Everything began with a photograph. On Monday morning, while Arya was flipping the promised shark-shaped pancakes, Rowan received a call from a friend in the media. "You need to see this article right now." Silverline Herald, a notorious tabloid outlet, had just published an exclusive piece. From nanny to wife? Arya Bloom spotted, living in Rowan Vale's million-dollar penthouse. The article dug into Arya's past, her years as a teacher, her sudden departure after a vaguely described incident, and was accompanied by a series of paparazzi photos. Arya buying medicine with Rowan. Arya watching over Elowyn sleeping on the sofa with a cold compress on her forehead. Another showing Sarah sitting close to her, clutching a teddy bear as if letting go would mean losing it again. And one of her entering the building using a residence key card. The comments flooded in, cruel and relentless. The classic path from nanny to wife. No formal childcare training, yet living with 2 children. She's clearly exploiting their grief. 3 kids, 1 woman? The script is just too perfect. Arya discovered the article while cleaning. She stood frozen, phone in hand, her breathing shallow. The screen glowed with images of her in this very kitchen, twisted into a story she did not recognize. Rowan stepped in and immediately knew she had seen it. "I'll contact legal," he said. "They won't get away with this." Arya was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "I'm not afraid of them, Rowan. I'm afraid the children will hear someone say, 'The woman you trusted has been lying.'" That evening, the school called. Due to concerns from the community, Arya was temporarily suspended from picking up the children until further notice. Naira asked why Claire wasn't coming along. Elowyn did not ask. She only looked on quietly. Sarah didn't ask either, but she spent the entire evening pacing between the living room and the front door, as if checking whether another disappearance was about to happen. That night, Arya sat on the balcony while cold rain tapped against the railing. Rowan brought out tea but said nothing. They sat in silence, sharing what was breaking. The next morning, Arya quietly packed. While the girls were still asleep, she placed 3 new stuffed toys on their pillows, one wearing a superhero cape, one in a detective's hat, and one with a small olive green scarf. She left a note for each of them. "I am not leaving you, but sometimes adults step back to protect what they love most. If your hearts still have room for me, I will find my way back." Rowan stopped her at the door. "You can't just leave like this." "I have no other choice," she replied, her eyes lowered. "We fight this together," Rowan said, his voice low but firm. "You, me, Nira, and Elowyn, we are a family." "And Sarah, too," he added, as if for the first time he had to speak his child's fear aloud. "A family on the front pages." Arya gave a quiet, pained smile. "Just one misunderstood photograph can hurt a child, Rowan." He fell silent. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered. "But this time I'm leaving because I love the children too much not to." And then she stepped out. No tears. No looking back. The door closed behind her, leaving Rowan alone with the words left unsaid. The next morning, Nira asked, "I miss Arya." Rowan clenched his fist, but before he could answer, Elowyn appeared, clutching her new stuffed toy. "I think she still remembers us." Sarah stood behind Elowyn, holding her olive green scarfed plush tightly, her tiny voice whispering, She'll find her way back." It did not take Rowan long to uncover who was behind the article. It was Harlan Crow, CEO of a rival media conglomerate whom Rowan had exposed in a corruption investigation 3 years earlier. Harlan didn't need to say a word. Rowan understood This was retaliation. That same day, Rowan called his lawyers, PR team, and the principal of Nira, Elwyn, and Sarah's school. He was done staying silent. "Aria Bloom is the only person who has brought peace to my family," Rowan said during a brief press statement outside his former newsroom. "She has not exploited anyone. She has not pretended. She has loved my children in a way no one ever has, not even me." The statement spread rapidly. Photos of Aria baking and reading bedtime stories to the girls were reshared with a different caption. Perhaps the only thing she ever took was their hearts. Aria watched the clip in a small cafe on the north side of the city. She had never expected Rowan to go public like that. Her chest tightened, grateful yet afraid. She had brought trouble into their lives. Should she go back? The answer came in 2 messages. The first was from Rowan. "If you still think you're an outsider, look at everything you've already done for us." The second was a voice recording. Nira's trembling voice. "Aria, if you can hear this, please come home. Elwyn isn't talking anymore, and Moss misses you." Then a smaller voice whispering close to the microphone. "And I miss you too. I kept his green scarf. Please don't get lost." Aria broke down right there in the cafe. No logic could stop her heart now. That evening, after a soft knock at the door, Rowan opened it. Aria stood there, soaked from the rain, eyes swollen, but brighter than ever. I'm not sure I should come back," she said, "but I can't be anywhere else." Rowan said nothing. He simply opened the door wider. Elwyn ran out first, clinging to her legs. Nira followed, holding Moss, now wrapped with a small green scarf. "We made this for Moss," Nira said, "so you'd remember how to come home." Sarah came last, clutching her olive-green scarfed plush, then rushed into Aria's arms, choking out, "I knew you'd come back." Aria knelt down and pulled all 3 into her embrace. "I missed you every day." The apartment seemed to exhale. The air felt lighter, the kitchen lights warmer. Rowan stepped closer and stood beside her, saying nothing more. That night, after Nira, Elwyn, and Sarah had fallen asleep, Aria sat in the living room, holding Moss, quietly gazing around the familiar space. Rowan poured tea and sat beside her. "You can stay as long as you want," he said. "No contracts, no need to prove anything." Aria nodded softly, her voice trembling. "I don't need anything. I just need to be here." And for the first time, neither of them felt lost anymore. Aria was still holding Moss in her arms, her gaze slowly drifting across the rain-streaked windows, over the sofa where the children usually sat watching cartoons, over the kitchen corner where the scent of cookies had once warmed the entire home. She drew a very gentle breath. "I thought I would never feel this again," Aria said softly. "The feeling of being home." Rowan turned to look at her. For the first time in a long while, his eyes no longer held the tightness of someone always afraid of losing, only a quiet, genuine calm. "You never left this place," he said slowly. "It's just, I was too afraid to keep you." Aria looked up. The distance between them now was only a single breath. Rowan lifted his hand, hesitating for half a second, as if afraid to shatter the fragile moment, then gently touched her cheek. His hand was warm, very real, unhurried. Aria did not step back. She tilted her head slightly, resting her forehead against his. Their breathing blended into a silence so deep the rain on the balcony could be heard. Then Rowan leaned down. The kiss was not rushed, not intense, just a very gentle touch, like a whispered promise. "I am here. You don't have to go anymore." Aria trembled softly, her hands lightly gripping the hem of his shirt, returning the kiss as a quiet consent. 2 months later, no one called Aria the nanny anymore. not because she had stopped doing what she always did, but because that title no longer fit the woman she had become. She was the one who took the girls to school every day, the one Elwyn showed her first loose baby tooth to, the one Sarah suddenly ran into the kitchen for one day, holding up a messy drawing and blurting out quickly, as if afraid of being too late, "I drew you here." The good news came on a quiet morning in a hospital room filled with soft white light. Rowan sat beside Aria, hand in hand, breathing tightly. She lay there, eyes fixed on the ultrasound screen where a tiny heartbeat tapped steadily, like gentle knocks on a sacred door. "It's a girl," the doctor smiled. "The heartbeat is very strong. All indicators look good." Rowan let out a breath, not in shock, but as if the whole world had been holding it with him. Aria turned to look at him. His face was not as radiant as she had imagined, but calm, deeply moved, and carrying something far more profound. That evening, as Aria read bedtime stories to Nira, Elwyn, and Sarah, the three girls climbed onto her bed, a habit since they learned about their little sister. Nira laid her head on Aria's belly and whispered, "Can you hear me, little sister? Do you like the baby bunny story?" Elwyn said nothing. She placed her small hand on Aria's belly. After a moment, she smiled. "I think she already knows who I am." Sarah placed her other hand on Aria's belly very gently, then whispered like a prayer, "Don't be afraid. Here, no one is leaving any more." Aria smiled and stroked Elwyn's hair. Then Nira said very softly, as if afraid of breaking something fragile, "Mom." Aria froze. Her heart was pierced by something warm, not burning, but gentle, overflowing. Elwyn followed softly. "Good night, Mom." Sarah whispered too, barely audible. "Good night, Mom." No one taught them to say it. No one rehearsed it. It came as naturally as love. And Aria understood. She did not need adoption papers. She was already their mother in the purest way. In the days that followed, Rowan grew quieter than usual. He watched Aria like someone carrying a beautiful secret. He took notes, checked schedules, whispered with Nira, Elwyn, and Sarah in the kitchen. Aria began to suspect something was happening, but she never imagined it was a proposal plan designed by one father and three little princesses. Nira drew the campaign plan. She called it Operation Ask Mom to Stay Forever. Elwyn was in charge of heart-shaped cookies. Sarah was in charge of the card. She carefully traced the letters darker, then added small stars around them, as if trying to keep a promise on paper. A week later, Aria returned from a prenatal appointment, her belly showing beneath her thin sweater. The apartment was dark, unusually quiet. She thought Rowan and the girls were asleep. But when she turned on the kitchen lights, the room lit up with warm golden string lights. On the dining table was a card, the handwriting messy but determined. "Mom, will you stay forever?" Aria covered her mouth. She turned and saw Elwyn holding moss. Nira was holding a small ring box, her face trembling but proud. Sarah stood beside her, gripping the hem of her shirt, eyes red but fighting back tears as if crying would make the promise slip away. And Rowan was down on one knee, his eyes sincere and gentle. "You have done what no one in my life has ever done," he said. "You healed wounds I was too afraid to face. You didn't replace anyone. You were simply yourself. And that was enough. I don't need eternal promises," he continued, "but if you'll allow it, let us be each other's family forever." Aria burst into tears, nodding so fast she could not speak. "I've been yours and the girls for a long time, but hearing this still feels like a dream." They held their wedding a month later in the small garden behind the house, the same place where Nira and Elwyn had once fought pillow battles. Now it became the most peaceful moment of their lives. Aria wore a simple white dress, her hair loose. Elowen scattered the paper flower petals she had cut all week. Nira served as the flower girl carrying the rings, this time for real, and did not drop them. Sarah carried a small flower basket, walking closely behind Elowen, her eyes fixed on Arya as if afraid that a single blink might make her disappear. There were no strangers present, only a few close friends and the gazes of 3 little girls looking at their mother, who was now truly theirs. No paperwork was needed. When the minister bent down and asked, "Nira and Elowen, do you agree to let Claire become your mother?" Nira shouted, "Yes." Elowen held Arya's hand tightly. "I think the baby sister agrees too." Sarah stepped forward half a step, her voice small but clear. "I agree too." Laughter cut through tears. That night, the family sat beneath paper lanterns. Arya rested her hand on her belly, where a tiny heartbeat was growing in love. Rowan gently placed his hand over hers. "I used to think we had lost everything." Arya leaned her head against his shoulder. "But then we found everything again, and more." Nira curled into her lap. Elowen fell asleep beside Moss. Sarah slept close, still gripping the hem of Arya's olive-green sweater, a habit that had turned into peace. 5 souls, 1 family. Jasmine was born on a quiet spring morning under one of Seattle's rare, gentle skies. The rain from the night before still clung to the hospital windows like crystal drops. Arya breathed hard, her forehead damp with sweat, but her eyes never left the tiny life crying for the first time in her arms. Rowan sat beside her, gripping her hand tightly. "A healthy baby girl," the doctor said. "Both mother and child are doing very well." Arya looked down at the tiny being stirring, her small fists clenched as if trying to hold on to the very first light. The moment was still, as if the world had paused to witness a beginning. "Welcome, Jasmine," Arya whispered. Rowan blinked. "Jasmine?" Arya nodded. "Our little ray of sunshine." He repeated the name, tasting it like a promise, and something inside him melted completely. 2 days later, Nira, Elowen, and Sarah were brought into the hospital room. They froze at the doorway. "She's so tiny," Nira whispered. "Smaller than Moss?" Elowen asked. Sarah said nothing at first. She just stared, as if afraid that breathing too hard might make the baby disappear. Arya smiled softly and placed Jasmine into Nira's arms. The girl sat straight, hands trembling but eyes shining. "Hi, Jasmine. I'm Nira. You're going to like sharks. Trust me." Elowen carefully stepped forward and draped a small blanket over her baby sister. "She's cold. This is the blanket I used when I was in Mom's belly." Sarah came last, gently placing her finger on the edge of the blanket and whispering, "Hi, baby. Please stay." Arya and Rowan looked at each other. No words needed, only understanding born of loss, healing, and love. Quiet weeks passed, filled with lullabies, midnight feedings, and sleepy smiles. Then one golden afternoon, the whole family gathered in the backyard, where they had promised forever. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, turning Jasmine's hair into golden silk. Arya sat in a chair, holding Jasmine asleep in her arms, tiny fingers clutching her shirt as if afraid the wind might carry her away. Rowan sat beside her, wrapping an arm around Arya. Nira and Elowen ran around the yard, throwing paper airplanes they had made that morning. Sarah ran a little slower, then came back and sat close to Arya's legs, looking up as if to confirm everyone was still here. "I once thought we had lost the most beautiful part of life," Arya whispered. "Then Jasmine came," Rowan said, "and you brought that beautiful part back." That evening, after the family finished dinner on the porch, the Seattle breeze was gentle, carrying the scent of wet grass and the soft chime of wind bells hanging beneath the wooden roof. Arya cradled Jasmine in her arms, her back resting against Rowan's shoulder. The baby slept peacefully, pink lips slightly parted as if dreaming a dream meant only for children. Neera sat cross-legged on the wooden floor, busy drawing a new picture with colored crayons. Elwyn lay on her stomach nearby, tilting her head to watch each line. Sarah sat close beside Arya, still holding on to the hem of her olive-green sweater, a habit she never outgrew. "What are you drawing?" Rowan asked. "Our family," Neera replied without looking up, but this time Jasmine is a little bigger. On the paper were 5 people standing beneath a large round sun. A small heart floated in the air, connecting each person with scribbled but steady lines. Elwyn tilted her head, then said softly, "This time, no one is standing far away." Arya bent down and kissed the girl's hair. Sarah suddenly whispered, her voice small but clear, "Here, no one has to be afraid anymore." Rowan heard it, his heart tightening, not with pain, but with deep gratitude. He looked around the house that had once echoed with too many cries, too many fears, and now held only even breathing, quiet laughter, and a gentle sense of safety spreading into every corner. He took Arya's hand. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think home was just a place to come back and sleep. But now I understand. Home is where you don't need to brace yourself before walking in." Arya rested her head on his shoulder, smiling. "And where you don't need to leave." Neera suddenly looked up, lifting the picture high. "Mom, Dad, can I hang this on the fridge?" Rowan nodded. Arya nodded. Elwyn smiled. Sarah nodded vigorously. The picture was pinned beside the older drawings, where everything had once begun. Jasmine stirred softly in Arya's arms, opening her eyes to glimpse the golden porch lights. She smacked her lips, releasing a tiny sound like a happy sigh. And this time, no one was afraid the moment would disappear. Because they had learned the most important thing: staying is a form of love.